welcome to Changemaker20. I'm Anugya Srivastav, and we are back with a new session under the theme Social Justice and Inclusion titled Accessibility and Inclusion for Persons with Disabilities. This topic will unravel the multifaceted dimensions of accessibility from the lens of legal, mental health, policy, and international lenses through a social justice perspective. How the inclusion and strengthening of accessibility standards of persons with disabilities has a profound impact on fostering social justice, highlighting the imperative to dismantle barriers that hinder the equal engagement of all members of society is what our esteemed panel comprising of Dr. Vaishali Kolhe, Navjit Gaurav, Professor Priti Saxena, and Dr. Gajendragar will delve into. But before we begin, I'd like to introduce them. Dr. Vaishali Kolhe is currently working as an associate professor at the Center for Disability Studies and Action School of Social Work at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. She is the project director of Field Action Project of TISS, I Access Rights Mission this initiative on inclusion and she collaborated with 14 universities of state of Maharashtra to develop and draft disability policy in higher education with UNCRPD context and EFA. She is the founder and editor of TISS Journal of TISS of Disability Studies and Research. She is an academic committee member at the NIEPID Secunderabad. She was on the selection committee of the Ministry of Social Justice in 2023 for the selection of member secretary of RCI. Architect Navjit Gaurav is a doctoral candidate rehabilitation science student at Queen's University, Canada, a medalist in disability studies and action from TISS Mumbai. He has extensive community work experience across different Indian states. As a community developer, he was instrumental in improving access to free quality education for school dropout children and women inside Delhi slums. He co-authored a book, Beginner's Guide on Access Audit for Higher Education Institutions, a photo-narrative approach. One of the recipients of the prestigious Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Scholarship 2019, globally, his research aims to explore the community schools design in Indian slums to promote meaningful participation and social interaction of children with disabilities. Professor Priti Saxena is Director Center of Postgraduate Legal Studies, ex-head Department of Human Rights and former Dean, School for Legal Studies, Babasaheb Bhimrao Ambedkar Central University, Lucknow. Besides University Gold Medal in LLM, she is the recipient of various scholarships during her studies. She has been conferred with the Prashati Patra from Nehru Yuva Kendra, Bareilly in 2002 under Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India. She got a fellowship from Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, and was selected for academic leadership program in higher education and visited Virginia University in USA in March 2019. Dr. Dr. Jahanara Gajendragar is head of Department of Psychiatric Social Work and expert in in the subject of mental illness, families, mental health, addiction, women with psychosocial disability, well-being, and homelessness. She is a part of various committees in the field work, psychiatry, and social work and Association of Social Work in India. She has 30 years of experience in mental health sector and contributed significantly to journal articles in the field of mental health. Without further ado, I would hand over to Dr. Kolhe.
Thank you so much, Anugya. I express my deep appreciation to the organizers of which is an NGO of Connecting Dreams for recognizing disability inclusion and accessibility as an important area and subject for today's International under Article 9 of UNCRPD. It is also a disability inclusion strategy 2023 for developing various mechanisms in place to advance accessibilities for persons with disability in relation to facilities, goods, services, and all kinds of inclusion in the society. Uh, if you look at the concept of social inclusion, it is defined as the process of coming together and improving the terms of participation in society, particularly for people who are socially disadvantaged, through enhancing their opportunities and equal access to the resources and voice and respect for the rights. If you look at the WHO Global Disability Action Plan 2014-21, a significant step has been taken for achieving health and well-being and human rights for persons with disabilities. The action plan endorsed by WHO member states in 2014 calls for them for removing barriers and improve access to all the health services and programs with accountability and strengthened in order to extend rehabilitation, assistive devices, support services, community-based rehabilitation, enhancing collection of relevant and internationally comparable data for persons with disability, and research in the area of disability-related services. If one looks at UNICEF Disability Inclusion Policy Strategy 2022-2030, which talks about improvement of disability inclusion, infrastructure, services, programs, coordination platforms, and access to comprehensive community care, support services within and across the sectors. The United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy 2022-25 talks about mainstreaming disability in every sphere of society, with accountability and inclusiveness as its core area. Persons with disability represents around 15% of the world's population, which is approximately around 1 billion people. A diverse, heterogeneous population of persons with disability face discrimination, stigma, other barriers that restricts them from participation in society on equal basis with others. With the adoption of 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development Goals, 2020-30 Agenda, its UN has pledged leaving no one behind, including persons with disabilities. Disability inclusion strategy is developed to operationalize its commitment in the inclusion of persons with disabilities across organizations, with specific actions to be taken between 2022 to 2025. So this becomes very urgent for all of us to work collectively toward the rights of the persons with disability within, within a disability-specific agenda on accessibility and inclusion for persons with disability, and that too with a social justice perspective. When we talk about social justice, it's all about providing everyone with equal economic, political, social, and rights and opportunities, and leaving no one behind. With this, introduction to our session today, I would like to highlight about the various speakers and their sessions, and also would like to highlight the field action project of the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, which is I-Access Rights Mission. The I-Access Rights Mission is an initiative that is started at Center for Disability Studies and Action, aiming to facilitate a dialogue in all academic disciplines on issue of disability and enabling an inclusive and accessible education for students with disabilities in higher education. I-Access Rights Mission is a field action project is launched in 2013 to develop accessible and inclusive policy framework with a bottom-up approach by involving students with disability and other stakeholders, which are university stakeholders, to work to create a conducive environment for the participation and equal opportunities for persons with disability. We were invited by the Directorate of Higher Education Director to work with 14 universities to to develop facilities for the persons with disability and students with disability in higher education, which resulted into a disability policy in higher education, which also involves various other members like Professor Priti Saxena and Professor Mahajan, who are part of preparing this policy. And Dr. Navjit Gaurav was also part of it in terms of doing the accessibility audits in 14 universities. I'm very happy that we are able to share this kind of a work on today's platform. Now I invite the first speaker of the day, Mr. Navjit Gaurav, who is a PhD scholar in Rehabilitation Sciences at the Queen's University, Canada. He is also a gold medalist at the Center for Disability Studies and Action at the Department of Social Sciences and does his research in the area of students with disability in higher education from the accessibility perspective. Today's topic, which Navjit is going to take, is on international aspects of accessibility. So over to you, Navjit.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Am I audible? Okay. And how much time do I have? Okay. Yeah, I'll try to wrap up before that. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction and giving the
We'll have
overview of
around
the
12 to 13 minutes to speak. And yeah, yeah, and each yeah,
Thank you so
yeah.
much.
Each speaker
Thank
will
you so much for this
have
wonderful
12 to
introduction and giving
12
a
minutes,
broad
12 to
overview of
30
the
minutes to
field of
speak.
disability and what's
Thank you.
happening across like large organizations that are creating influence globally. For instance, United Nations and the body of United Nations, what kind of development they are doing in the field of disability. I would like to pick up from where you left, or maybe what you highlighted, some of the key concepts that are really important when we think of accessibility and inclusion. So one could be like the social integration, or maybe social participation, engagement of the person with disability, and how we construct disability as a whole. Because so far, based on my own research in PhD and my experiences of working in the field, I believe disability is more of an attitude that people carry, and how they perceive and what choices they offer to a population to have. So, for instance, thinking more from an architect's perspective of how we create built environment. So if you see a person's environment significantly impact or affect the experiences or the extent of disability. For instance, inaccessible environment create barriers that often hinder the full and effective participation of people with disability in the society, maybe be it on equal basis or be it to even some extent. For instance, disability can mean limited access to education, healthcare, reduced social interaction and involvement opportunities, isolations from remaining at home, and often these experiences emerge from the cultural or social norms or the misconception that devalue or overlook the need of individuals with impairment. For instance, if you look at the Rights for Persons with Disability Act of 2016 by Indian government, they define disability as the emphasis that uh, disability lies not in the person but the barrier that is imposed by the environment. This environment could be built environment. This environment could be the social environment or the surroundings where they live in, the neighborhood. This could be the psychological environment. For instance, what kind of uh, experience they have within the society, how they are treated, what choices they have in terms of participation. And based on these experiences, a person internalize themselves about their own identity, value, and belief, and even how they are respected as a person. In terms of built environment, if we think, disability is not solely determined by individuals' physical or cognitive condition, but heavily influenced by choices we make. When I say we, I am referring to the designers, or for instance, the architects or the planners. What choices we make while designing these spaces. For instance, we are also the part of the society, right? And whatever learning or understanding we might have, could be potentially embedded or could be potentially understood based on the societal construction of disability. So these choices that designers make are embedded in these societal values and are often influenced by the cultural biases or ableist assumptions. Tell you one example from my own PhD research. So my research involved developing design considerations for community schools in Mumbai slums so that children with disability can have better participation experience. They don't drop out from school and complete their schooling. And moreover, they enjoy being in the school space. So when I discussed with the designers, so one of the assumptions that they had about creating an inclusive space is let's say, there are no children with disability that come to school. So why do we create provision for accessibility? Or there are very limited number of children. Why do we create a spatial or separate provision for accessibility for them? However, the thing is, when you look from the accessibility perspective, unless a space, a curriculum, or maybe a society is accessible for people, there won't be people, right? This is very similar to saying, let's say you want to host people, or maybe you want people to buy something, but you don't have any sort of setup where people can come and buy, and you keep on like talking about why are people not buying, right? So you need to create the facility. You need to make sure that people are aware of that facility. You need to make sure that people have access to the facility. You need to make sure that the facility is available, approachable, and also it should be acceptable. And moreover, when we think of disability, particularly from the designer's perspective, it is not something that is more related to the design that we create, but more based on how we perceive disability and how that perception is translated when we design build spaces. So sometimes it could be a deliberate design decisions. For instance, I would like to quote an example from my own experiences of working with I-Access Rights Mission on 14 universities in Maharashtra. So we did accessibility audit compliance for 14 universities. Approximately each universities had, let's say, 15 to 20 ramps that they created to ensure that their campuses are accessible. However, out of, let's say, those ramps, there would be like 2 or 3% of the ramp that would be usable by the people with disability. So there is no point of investing hell lot of money and creating provision that is not at all usable by people. So the idea that I'm trying to put forward here is just to make sure that you are on good terms with some sort of ranking of universities or some sort of getting accreditation by the government. Don't create the provision. Either don't create it, and if you are creating it and if you are investing money, try to create something that is meaningful for the people. If you have see, as an architect myself, I used to think that accessibility is more about building a ramp, providing an accessible toilet or an elevator. And trust me, I was wrong. And through my PhD, I have learned that I was wrong in terms of understanding accessibility. For instance, United Nations define accessibility as ease of use of the provision and flexibility to accommodate each user's need and preferences. But when we look at the implementation of that, we always think about creating a provision that ensures access. We miss on the major chunk of usability. Whatever provisions we are creating, whether it is usable by the people for whom it was created or not. So for instance, I have seen ramps that are almost like the slopes of the ramp were so weird. They were so steep that even a person who has no disability could not like climb up and down of the ramp. Or maybe when they create provisions, particularly thinking from designers' perspective, because designers think a lot around aesthetics of the building. So they create some provisions with, let's say, lots of stairs or level differences. And when they have to consider the accessibility compliance, they'll put a ramp at the back of the building, which is not even noticeable by people. By people, I mean everyone. So if it is not even, people are not even aware of how to access a building, how will they go? And it's really difficult to travel all across the build form and go at the back to enter the building. That's so derogatory for the person. Or else shut down the front entrance and allow everyone to enter from the back. That would be like the ideal way of ensuring inclusion. So the idea here is, when we think of accessibility or inclusion, we always think of creating something that is an added like solution to an existing problem, rather than creating it which is more integrated or inclusive. Because integration and inclusion, they both comes with the choices that we offer to the people who are going to use the space, and how we are including them in terms of making those choices. Who are making these decisions? Whose decisions are influencing these people who are part of the process, and who is going to use and live in that environment? So majority of the time, it's only the decision makers. For instance, let's say people who are investing the money, people who are constructing the build form, and then they ask people to come and inhabit that place. And that's where there is a huge gap in terms of providing accessibility or ensuring inclusion. So as I was saying, that accessibility is not just about providing access. It requires the characteristics of the built environment that empower individuals. By empowering, I mean that they have their own choices to engage in the activity, and they feel that they belong in the environment. They should not use, like, we should not create an environment where it induces dependency on other individuals. So we need to be like really considerate on that point. And accessibility is a right for everyone. It is not only the inherent right of persons with disability, but also it means that you are ensuring that they exercise all their rights and fundamental freedom, and they feel empowered to fully participate in the society. So as I was saying, accessibility is not just about building a ramp or providing an accessible toilet. It's also about the use and size of space within the build, or the physical support, or the support that you provide. For instance, even consider a small toilet. If you don't have supports like grab bars or something, or easy maneuvering of toilet doors, enough space for a wheelchair to enter and maneuver and shift a person from wheelchair to the toilet seat, or the space. So accessibility could also be thought around what kind of facilities people are using frequently, and how much distance it has from the where they're residing. For instance, if we consider school, so facilities that are frequently used by children, for instance, drinking water facility, washrooms, playground, they should be at an approachable distance. They should be obstruction free spaces. There should be like anti-skid or labeled flooring. The environment should be colorful. There should be large openings. Because majority of the time when we think of inclusion and accessibility, we majorly think of representation of the people, that we make sure that people are somehow included in the setup, but that they are not at all included in the way decisions are made about their inclusion. So the idea of inclusion should definitely entail the people who are going to use the space, or who are like at the margins of the society. They should be included in the decision process, to ensure that whatever environment that we are creating, be it the built environment or the social environment or the psychological environment, it's more inclusive for the people. People are equal participant in that. They have options of developing meaningful relationships, bonds with the community, engaging in the community. And that could be done when you have like some sort of policy or law that ensures that you have to do something. Because majority of the time, when you think of built environment or building standards, how we differ from like the global perspective to Indian perspective is, it has not evolved or changed as it is being multiple time revised in the global canvas. However, I would also like to highlight that globally, when we think of accessibility, there is a huge difference between India and the outer world, because India has other limitations as well. By limitations, I mean that there are large number of people, that the population is huge, while globally it may be like very small number of people living in a city. So creating provisions is easier, because there you have to invest a lot to ensure everyone has access. But that is what should be done. Like, even if a single person is not able to access any facilities or enter anything or use the facility in the similar way than other people, then there is no point of inclusion, and we are not like creating something that is at all inclusive. And that's what we need to understand. Thank you so much, ma'am. I think I'll stop here. Maybe we'll discuss more when we have some.
It's like Vaishali isn't here.
I don't see like Dr. Kolhe here. So maybe how about we start with maybe Dr. Janara or Professor Saxena if you want to start.
Dr. Priti, if you can start.
Yeah, sure. Why not? So, Vaishali is not here, but thank you very much, Dr. Vaishali, the co-panelist here, and also thanks to the Changemaker for your efforts for mainstreaming the persons with disability. As you know that I've been asked to speak on the judicial approach on the rights of the persons with disability. But one important thing which I wish to mention here is that it's not only the law or legal provisions, whether it's from the international level or from the domestic legislations. We are talking about the CRPD or the rights of the persons with disability. And that protects the rights of the persons. But the suitable interpretation of law, that also plays a very, very significant role. And for this, the judges who are delivering the judgment, their opinion and their viewpoint, their personal and individual outlook also, that matters more in the final judgment. Otherwise, you see, legal provisions remains the same, but interpretation changes. And I'll start with a quote of conversation that was in November 2022 with the Chief Justice of India, presently Justice Dhananjay Chandrachud, when he emphasized the importance of digital accessibility for people with disability in the courtrooms. And this is one of the very important thing which is to be made available to those who are practicing in the court of law. And he asked one of the senior advocate, and he's blind, and SK Rangta for help. And S.K. Rangta, he is the first visually impaired lawyer to be given the title of senior advocate. And CGI questioned from him that I wanted just to ask you a personal question. I'm curious as to how you were able to follow the case law being referred by the other advocates during the hearing in the court of law. I hope it is okay with you or not. Because the other advocates, they are citing from the compilation and how it is handled in the court. How do you follow it? So in response, what Advocate Rangta said is that he used a program to convert text to braille. And then the CGI question, Advocate Rangta, that I want to ask you a personal question. And on this, when this Advocate Rangta find that it is what we want here in the court, that you must do something towards the digitalization. The software used in the court, that should be compatible with the software we are using in our devices, so that the content may be converted to braille. And then you see the behavior and the care for disability rights that have been strongly supported by Chief Justice Chandrachud. So the judge not only improved the accessibility on the Supreme Court website by adding on this audio capture, but he also issued a directive in his cause list requiring that all the documents filed in the court must be filed in the native digital form in soft copy. So, in this context, I'll be sharing with you few judicial decisions taken by the court, because there are plethora of judgments, and within limited time, I'm not able to discuss all those cases. But very few cases which have been decided by the court, and we see the approach for the protection and respect of the rights of the persons with disability. And you see, in maximum cases, the judiciary has interpreted the rights of the persons very liberally, and read those provisions also which is not the part of the black letters law. And that is the beauty of interpretation what the court did in those cases. It was in 2004 that the Supreme Court converted a letter, just a letter from a right activist, late Javed Abidi, to the then Chief Justice V.N. Khare, demanding accessible elections in the public interest litigation. And that has paved the way for major reforms in the way elections are conducted. So a letter has been accepted as a writ petition. Then in Disabled Rights Group versus Union of India, the case was filed before the Supreme Court, and Justice A.K. Sikri, he has delivered the judgment, because this was a case which was raising three issues basically regarding the rights of the disabled persons for their education. That was a reservation in the admission, then orthopedic challenge people their full access to, so that they may walk around the educational facilities freely and they can use the amenities, and also the pedagogy, that is providing the suitable accommodation and this instructional resource for the people with disability, and that was depending on the degree of their impairment to enable them to pursue their studies. And here, Justice A.K. Sikri held that we should note right away that the petition's original filing is limited only to the law school, because the case was relating to the facilities and accessibility in the law schools. But what the court has read with that writ petition is that it has given the directions not only to be confined with the law schools, but that includes the educational institutions in India. All the educational institutions, those have been covered. So I'm just trying to emphasize here that it is not only the legal provision, but it is the opinion, it is the outlook of the particular judge that matters more. And if the judge wanted, he could have confined the judgment only to the law schools. But the judgment has been broadened the scope to cover the all the educational institutions, so that the pedagogy, the students, and the facilities, infrastructure, reservation and admission, whatever is there, that has been given to all the students in all the educational institutions. Similarly, another case was also decided, Rajiv Raturi case. That is also one of a very important case where the bench of the Supreme Court that has given a detailed direction for making appropriate provisions for the accessibility of handicapped persons through this. We can say the scope of that petition was confined to the persons suffering from visual impairment only. But the court has included many other aspects also, which are related to the other persons suffering from other types of the disability even. So it is also one of very important judgment, Rajiv Raturi, where the court has widened the scope and has shown and that they respect the rights of the persons with disability. It is not that all the persons have to come to the court, but even if a single person is coming to the court, even if he is writing a letter to the court will accept that and will deliver the judgment in favor of those persons. Then one more case that was decided by the Supreme Court, Pankaj Sinha, where some directions were also issued by the Supreme Court regarding this tuberculosis drugs, which were to be made available through the primary health centers, and that includes the to leprosy persons also. And many directions were given, and the court has also given that direction that it has to be reviewed, that whatever directions we are giving, those directions are being followed or not, those directions are being executed or not. And for that, the directions which were given in this particular case, those directions, the copy were also given to all the health centers in the center level as well as the state level, so that they may be aware as to what has to be done for those persons. not only to the hospitals, doctors, but the social workers, experts, NGOs, government officials. They all were involved in that to desist that there should not be any discriminatory behavior while examining and treating the persons with leprosy. Then one case was decided by the Supreme Court in Shyam Narayan Choksi. That is also known regarding the national anthem case, where the petitioner, he was considered to be one of the public spirited person, and he has approached to the court under the Constitution of India to take appropriate steps for inculcating the public a proper sense for paying due respect to the national anthem, because this is one of the fundamental duty of every citizen to respect and to sing this national anthem. So he filed this writ petition in the court of law, and the court has passed the interim order also. The directions were given to all the picture halls that all the cinema halls in India, they shall play the national anthem before the feature film starts, and all the persons who are present in the hall are obliged to show the respect to the national anthem. So this judgment was of November 30, 2016. And then just 1 month after, we have this Rights of the Persons with Disability Act that was passed in December 2016. Though we were also having the earlier law of 1995, but this act has given rights to the persons with disability. And that's how you see the Supreme Court has modified its order of 30th November. And it has directed that the persons who are wheelchair users, those with autism, the persons who are suffering from multiple disabilities, Parkinson, and other types of the disabilities, they may be deaf, they may be blind, so they should be treated not to be within the ambit of the order that has been passed by the court. That is, all have to stand for the respect of the national anthem, and they all have to sing. That is the order which was passed. So that order was not made applicable to those who belongs to this category, which come under the persons with disability. And who can forget the case of Jija Ghosh versus Union of India? And we all know that Jija Ghosh is an Indian citizen with cerebral palsy, and she's an eminent activist involved in the disability rights. And she's also the member of various bodies and recipients of the various awards also. She was deboarded from aircraft being disabled, highest case of the human indignity. And this is, you see, not only humiliated and traumatized her, but also deprived the conference organizers and all the other attendees of the opportunity to hear her thoughts and experiences. And that also prevented her from providing her analysis of the Indo-German projects under review, for which she was going to attend, but she was not allowed to board the flight and to reach the place where the conference was being held. So case was filed, and then the court held that the right that are granted to the differently able persons under the Act of 1995, because that was the case of 2018, and at that time this case was filed under 1995. So that are founded on the sound principles of human dignity. Though it was not mentioned anywhere, but the court has read that if you are not paying due respect, if you are discriminating the persons, you have to take care of the dignity of that person, which is the core value of the human rights. And it is also treated as a significant facet of right to life and personal liberty, because right to life and personal liberty, that is given and conferred to everyone. The Constitution of India that confers this right under Article 21, and that is available to everyone. So this human dignity, the roots of this human right to human dignity for all the persons, that has its roots in the Constitution of India, and that is applicable to all, because the very beginning of the Constitution starts with the word "we the people of India," and that "we" includes everyone. It's not discriminating anyone. So disabled persons who are the part and parcel, who are the citizens of the country, they should be given and they should be treated with full dignity. This is their human right. So this was the judgment of the Supreme Court. There are many cases which have been decided which are in favor of the rights of the persons with disability, and we see the approach of judiciary in maximum cases is just to uphold the rights jurisprudence towards the persons with disability so that they can lead a dignified life. Many directions have been also given in various cases on the accessibility right of the persons, the reservation in the academic institutions, the reservation in the professional employments also. They have been also provided with the opportunity to enter into the profession, all these things. But as rightly discussed by the earlier panelists, that what is the use of all those rights which are not being exercised in a proper manner, like accessibility that has been discussed by the court, that has to be given, but what type of that accessibility is, whether the persons for whom this right is created or interpreted in the favor of that, whether they are able to access that particular opportunity or not. So for that, I think that the efforts of all of us should be to have no mercy or no pity, but and equal participation for all in all the spheres of life, because we all know that disability is not a state of inability, and for that we need to know what are their rights of the access, what are their rights for the reservation, what are their rights for various opportunities, which are the part of not only of the rights of the person with disability act, but UNCRPD and also the supreme law of the land, that is the Constitution of India. So, with these words, I once again thank the maker, the panelists, and Dr. Kolhe for giving me the opportunity. Though there are plethora of cases, but due to the short time, I couldn't discuss all those cases. But I have just trying to say that even if a single thing is to be decided by the court, but court has taken the opportunity to spread that thing to the others also. Thank you very much.
Okay,
I
that
don't
was a
see that.
wonderful. That was a wonderful session, ma'am. That was really good. Thank you so much. Should we wait for Vaishali or someone?
I believe it's better you start and maybe Dr. Kohli can start.
Start with, because we have to confine the session
Yeah,
within
that's also
time
there.
also.
Okay. Just for the panelists' information, I work for a neuropsychiatric hospital at Delhi, having been trained at the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences in Bangalore, and currently working as a professor and head of the Department of Psychiatric Social Work. So my discipline is basically social work, but studying social work and understanding how we can use social work methods and tools with persons with psychiatric illnesses. I have about, at IBHAS, I think I have about 20 years of experience. Prior to that, I have been in teaching as well as also worked in Tata Institute. And that's how I know Dr. Vaishali Kolhe. She was my colleague there. And okay, just to give a brief of, how mental illness is a little different from other kinds of disabilities. Basically, when now we know that there are a lot of disabilities that come under the ambit uh, of that require where people can ask for guardianship, maybe where people are considered as people with RPWD, under RPWD and all that. There are many kinds of disabilities that come under, maybe speech impairment, hearing impairment, low vision, blindness, locomotor disabilities, autism, specific learning disabilities, thalassemia, and so many of the other kinds of illnesses come. But the difficulty with mental illness is such that people do not give them the kind of respect or let us say the empathy that other persons with other kinds of illnesses get. That is what we have been seeing. For example, whenever we have tried to rehabilitate persons who have been recovering from mental illness or people who have recovered from mental illness, it's very, very difficult for us to place them in any kind of an organization or a place for employment. So most of the time we have to look for sheltered employment. For example, when we visit, let us say, McDonald's, when we visit, some clothing stores, some of these slightly sophisticated kinds of clothing stores. I'm not looking at smaller clothing stores. You find people who are speech and hearing impaired, and you try to ask the price of something, or can you get this material in a different color. Then only you realize that they are not able to speak back to you. Okay, and so then they go and look at other of their colleagues, and then they assist you. This kind of an opportunity is almost nil for persons with mental illnesses, because I think the world thinks that if a person has lost his cognitive ability, then he is of no good. I think that's what it generally sort of boils down to. We have seen that mental illness can be caused by various factors. It can be caused by biological factors. It can be caused by extreme psychosocial factors. It can be caused because of, biological in the sense of, it can be carried from as hereditary. It can be if there is a family history of mental illness, then it's possible that, at least about 25% of the offspring, chances of the offspring getting the same kind of disability, especially chronic illnesses and major illnesses like schizophrenia and bipolar affective disorder, is very high. But the difficulty that we have been facing is, while persons with other kinds of disability are able to get recognized in the society, it is very difficult to even find an existence for the persons with psychiatric disturbances. It's very difficult to get a ration card in their name. It's very difficult to get an Aadhaar card for them. It's very difficult for us to get open a bank account for them, because everywhere what they require is whether the person has a competence to operate his bank account. And while we have a 350 bedded hospital at IBHAS, Institute of Human Behavior and Allied Sciences, Delhi, we also have a small halfway home kind of a setup that is there. And till now, we have not been able to open bank accounts for our residents. While a few of them, we have tried a lot, gone to the authorities and got the Aadhaar card for them, at least for a majority of the persons who are actually living with us. That is, state is the guardian of these individuals. Even people who are slightly restored, if I can say, with very residual kind of symptoms, still bank account has been out of the question, because they either ask for who will be the guardian for this person, whether the state will stand as the guardian, who will help in operating the bank. When you have a family, it's easier because either the sibling or the parents will ask for guardianship, and getting some kind of even a simple kind of employment is very difficult. The second thing that I have seen is other kinds of disabilities are visible. Okay, you can actually see those things. If a person is blind, if a person is not able to speak, or if a person has locomotor disability, they are very visible. But a person having mental illness, let us say a person having schizophrenia but is sort of recovering, difficult to get a rail concession for him, difficult to get a bus concession for him. And usually people are able to very clearly make out persons with intellectual disability. That is, persons who have mental retardation. It's a term that we generally don't use nowadays. But persons with mental illness, we still struggle to go to the commissioner, disability commissioner. We knock on the doors of Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. and ask them that why is there such a difficulty in allowing rail concessions to persons who are accompanying these persons who require to be brought regularly for treatment. Okay, so some of these difficult things are there. And while we talk about right to education, okay, persons with intellectual disability, or let's say with specific learning disability, okay, what we call as dyslexia, for them also to integrate these children into the regular schools, when we talk of inclusion, it's a very, very difficult task.